Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our long-running series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. And today we're taking a look at Dragon Gun, released in 1992 by Data East. And holy hell, is this an intense game. Before I get too far involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I have a Patreon link down below in the description as well. But right off the top, you can clearly tell Dragon Gun is a light gun game, or in this instance, an XY potentiometer game. Basically the same concept, except slightly different technology. But I love this game, and it's not just because I love light gun games. If you've been watching my channel whatsoever, you know it's one of my favorite genres. And if you're new to the channel, now you know I love these games. But I just love everything Dragon Gun is doing. It is wild, it's intense. The character design is great, the sprite scaling is incredible. It has everything I'm looking for when I'm looking for a really fun light gun game. And this one is obscure as hell. I've seen a cabinet for it once. I do not know anybody who owns this game. I looked around to see what a current price point for a PCB was as of the time of this recording, and I couldn't even find one for sale. So it's definitely one that I'm assuming most people probably have either heard about once or never heard about. But this game has what I crave when I'm talking light gun action. If I had to give one strike against the game, it may be that it's actually too intense. It's just throwing everything at you at every single moment in time. You never get a chance to rest. You see those little white hamster-like guinea pigs down there? They give you power-ups if you shoot them. I feel kind of bad about shooting them because they're the one thing in the game that looks kind of cute, but you have to do it. But Data East was always known for really intense action games in arcades, and I think they made some of the best. This is definitely, like I said, a way more rare and obscure game. You're not going to hear this game mentioned in the same breath as something like House of the Dead or Carnival, which I think is really disappointing because I love it. And the first thing I love about it is the setting and the artwork. It's got this really awesome sword and sandals, Conan the Barbarian look to it, which just absolutely does it for me. But the sprite work's incredible too. You have these zombies popping out of the ground and you can shoot their arms off, you can shoot their legs off, they'll crawl at you. You can even shoot their head off and their torso alone will try to continue to attack you. Or then you get these gigantic sprites of these massive skeletons wearing full body armor, carrying a sword. They don't really ever attack you unless you wait too long, but it's just such a great look. And this game is throwing so many sprites at you at any given moment in time, and it's always running at a perfect 60 frames per second, along with that sprite scaling that looks really good. I think this game holds up really well graphically. It reminds me in some ways of Crypt Killer, even though that's a much later game. And I would say this one does look a little bit better than Crypt Killer just because that game is notoriously fun but very ugly. But with Dragon Gun, all that sprite work really does hold up well, and you can see that Data East is doing some awesome sprite scaling, just like Sega was known to do as well, and I do love it. And I just love all the enemy designs. You have these giant lizards with these huge claws, you have bees, you have zombies. It really mixes up the classic horror elements, things like skeletons and zombies, with way more organic monsters like bees and beetles and things like that. It's got a good vibe going for it. And the boss battles are absolutely epic. They are long, they are intense, and they are quite difficult. If I did have to make one actual complaint about this game, is that it is definitely a quarter muncher. It's going to take as many credits off you as it possibly can. If you add a second player, there's not that many more enemies on screen at once, and the game actually becomes easier. So this is the type of game that really comes alive with two players, because you can focus on one side of the screen while your friend next to you focuses on the other part of the screen. But obviously, since I'm not popping quarters into this, it really doesn't matter how many credits I use. You even get a decent amount of story in between each stage. It's about as much as any arcade game is going to give you, but it's there, it's worthwhile, and it's a lot of fun. And you can see as we move on into the sky on stage 2, it's just so much fun to look at. But as good as this game plays, as good as it looks, I also love the fantasy soundtrack. It's got the vibe I'm looking for. So go ahead and listen for like 35-45 seconds and I'll come back and tell you more about Dragon Gun. But enjoy. My only other issue with the game, and I'm sure you could hear there in spots, is that some of the sound effects are a little bit harsh, but it sounds like it's a digital sample, and of course in 1992, the audio hardware designed to play those samples wasn't the best in the world, so you kind of have to give it a little bit of a pass there. And every once in a while when you get into a really intense boss battle where you have all of this sprite scaling going on, it'll go to a black background, and I'm assuming that's just because it couldn't handle putting a real background up at the same time, or maybe it's an aesthetic choice, I really don't know. But fighting this worm here is absolutely amazing. It definitely has some Space Harrier vibes in certain spots, except obviously it's not in the third person. And it's a bummer that this game isn't more well known because I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite light gun 2D games around. And it seems like Data East games definitely don't get the credit they deserve compared to some other arcade manufacturers. I mean, Data East made some incredible games, but they're not going to get mentioned in the same conversation as somebody like Sega or Capcom or Namco or even Taito. And that's a little bit of a bummer, and I've definitely featured a lot of Data East games on this series, and I'll definitely be featuring more in the future. But if you see Data East and it's an arcade game, chances are it's going to be a good time. And now that we're on to stage 3 here, I do like that the game mixes things up. Sometimes you're traveling really fast and going up into the air. Other times the game's going to slow down and give you a little bit more of a breather. And you'll see I took another continue there. I didn't count how many credits I used to beat this game for the series, but it was probably like $30 equivalent if you were pumping in 50 cents a play. So you're definitely going to be going through a lot of quarters. If you see this game in arcades, you better have a lot of money on you, or else you're probably only going to see like the second stage till you want to skip ahead. But I even love the screen transitions. It brings us into a new area and kind of uses the background layer to hide things. Now we have these giant armored crabs, and we have this barbarian coming in Legion of Doom style armor on his shoulders. It's just a lot of fun, and this is kind of just a little mini sub-boss, and the game's always playing around with its pacing, which I think is a good thing, because even though this game is intense from start to finish, I do like that you get this little breather in between screen transitions. And you'll see that if you do take your finger off the trigger, you're going to get a charge shot. Now the game doesn't give you that many opportunities to use it just because you're always shooting at something, but it does exist, and you'll see that we do have some bombs as well. That is the Dragon Force or Dragon Gun. The game tells you what it is, but it's kind of hard to understand. But you definitely want to save those up for the bosses, because you'll see here as we go into Flagog, he's a frog with a crown or a cloth of hair. I'm not really sure what he is, but he's fun. Using those bombs is going to take a lot of life off of the bosses, and they have a lot of life bar, so it's definitely suggested that you use something like that. But I love this boss fight too. You have this gigantic waterfall with a vanishing point right in the middle of the screen. You have these waves coming up. He's shooting these kind of head crab looking enemies at you, all while he's hopping around in the background. There's just so much going on the screen at one time in Dragon Gun. I love it. Now I get that these games aren't for everybody, and I'm always advocating for more light gun games. I wish it was still a genre that we got a lot of, but I get it might not be your favorite thing, but give it a try if you're not super into light guns. And I'm curious, if you are into light gun games, leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite one is, because this is probably my favorite arcade genre of all time. I just absolutely love them. But moving on to the next stage, it changes up again. We're in this forest in between these two layers. You have the canopy and you have the ground, and I just love all this scaling and rotation and everything going on. The parallax scrolling looks incredible, and it really gives you a great sense of depth. And as this gigantic worm comes in, Glock here, you have to shoot these like pustules, or like, I think you know what they actually look like, on the side of his body and knock his legs off, and it is just so much fun. But yeah, that is Dragon Gun. I give it a high thumbs up, 9 out of 10, recommend it. Otherwise, we will be back next Sunday, another episode in the Unported playlist. We'll have videos throughout the week as well. But leave me a comment down below, tell me what your favorite light gun game is, and tell me if you ever heard this one before. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.